FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 3/24/20, and, well, much turmoil going on. Will we have a stimulus package? My guess is yes, because as you know, no politician was never not reelected because they gave away too much of the taxpayer money. So expect it to go through shortly, for sure. Well, if you've been listening to the Financial Survival Network for the past 9 years, anytime during that, we've been warning you that this was going to come. We told you numerous occasions that there was a seeming normalcy after the financial collapse of '08 and that it wasn't real. And now, all of a sudden, here we are 9 years later from when we started. We started in 2011. The crash has come, and we always thought it would be from a collapsing currency or a war or something, but no, it's a pandemic. It's a flu, a super flu. Maybe not, maybe yes, maybe it's just all a media creation. Well, we know that the coronavirus, COVID-19, exists. Met one of my relatives just came down with it or was diagnosed as such. He's younger. He'll get through it fine. He's 34. But the fact is, this thing is having an impact upon the world. What about our national security? Well, I want to hear your opinion about COVID-19. The emails have just been pouring in. I'm answering them as quickly as I can, I promise, and I will answer yours. The email address is kl@kerrylutz.com, kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, now let's find out about the national security implications of the coronavirus. We've got Brian Boyd with us. Brian, you're a 30-year plus intelligence analyst, counterterrorism specialist, former Green Beret, and so many other accomplishments to your credit that we would spend the whole interview just talking about them, but we really appreciate you coming on. What do you think about this whole thing? The way that it has shut down the economy, the global economy, what's going on here?
Well, probably the easiest way to begin is to try and look at the actions that were taken by President Trump back in January when he decided, as a result of learning this thing was going on in Wuhan, China, and he shut down China. He took a lot of heat for it. His opponents in the political process went after him. And you could go back and dig up all the naysayers and all that stuff. The interesting thing is because he took some action, and now he's getting a lot of credit for having got ahead of the problem here. And with the passage of the Defense Production Act, which has been invoked numerous times since the Korean War, we now have a country that's rallying around him. And the paradox, if you listen to the White House briefings or even the governor's briefings down here in Florida by DeSantis, what's interesting is so many private industries have jumped into this without being mandated and are doing mass productions of masks and ventilators. And it's amazing. It's a lot like, as everybody's saying, the aftermath or during World War II.
Right. Yeah. And it's fascinating that this has happened. You know, he's calling it the Chinese virus. And by all rights, it is. And China really exacerbated the situation, caused this, precipitated it by not telling the world the truth about the pandemic, the rising pandemic, because they knew that the entire world would have cut them off instantly, temporarily. Instead, they let it spread. And so calling it the Chinese virus, Chinese coronavirus, Wuhan virus, Wuhan coronavirus, Wuhan novel coronavirus, it's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the paradox. He's never been politically correct. A little bit like, we had German measles. Nobody got upset about that. But and MERS was from the Middle East. So it's
Spanish
more
flu.
than a normal way of, and he's not getting hung up on it. The Chinese are notorious for disinformation. They're an extremely secretive society. And there's probably some paradoxes that'll come out of this when we get past this curve that we're in now. One of the things that's been happening is because China wound up doing most of our pharmaceuticals, this country will stop using the Chinese source for pharmaceuticals. Remember, years ago when the Middle East was holding us hostage over oil, we don't have that problem anymore today because we're self-dependent. So this will push things back. Years ago, Puerto Rico was the source for most of our pharmaceuticals, but because of past administrations and tax tariffs and other issues, we pushed that out of Puerto Rico to China. Well, now that we have this issue, I think it'll cause America to be stronger financially and economically. We'll start becoming more independent as a country, and our pharmaceutical industry will probably come alive here. So that's one of the paradoxes of this epidemic that we're going through. The other thing is that, if you don't mind me running a segue, a lot of people ask about why Italy. You want to continue, or?
Oh, yeah. Well, let me just add, there's a lot of benefits that are going to come from this, not the least of which is everybody's going to be washing their hands no matter what, and that will reduce further incidences of the flu, because one of the main ways that you pick up influenza is by not, on your hands, touching your face, etc. And there's a lot of permanent changes that are going to be made. But just tell us why Italy. I have my ideas about it, and then I want to get into a couple other things about the nature of this pandemic and what we're really looking at.
Well, I was interviewed on another radio station several days ago, and I decided to look into why Italy, of all countries, and why Iran. Iran is easier to answer, but in Italy, you have to look at the events back in November and December. The Italian government had good intelligence about this thing going on in Wuhan, just as our government did and others. Now, Trump took action very quickly. He took political heat for it. The Prime Minister, Conte of Italy, chose to ignore it, and they said it was just a Chinese thing. Now, by the time they had their first case on January 29th, the next day they invoked the travel ban, but within 20 days they had 12,000 cases because they were late on the scene. They were late to take action. Again, I'm an intelligence officer, and one of the things you don't do is ignore the intelligence. The other reason is almost 25% of the Italian population is over 65. They are a familiar, they're multi-generational as a country. They spend a lot of time with families. And the one thing you don't tell an Italian is social distancing, which is the opposite of their behavior, and they're a smoking society. Now, these all play into it, and this is partly stuff that I've been learning from Dr. Birx.
Right.
Because she's the CDC, and she's making a very clear case. But remember, she, as an expert, is studying what happened in Italy and France and Iran to a degree, and they're trying to get ahead of the curve by not repeating those same mistakes. Spain's doing the same problem. Spain ignored a lot of their behavior, and they were actually reveling in the streets and partying and doing just the opposite of what they told the Floridian spring breakers, go home. And again, that creates the epidemic because they're not social distancing. So maybe that's a short answer for you.
And let's not also forget that, Brian, that they are tightly, densely populated cities, all right, just like New York. And they, like you said, it's an older population. It's the second oldest population in the world. And like you say, no social distancing for Italians. And I'm not saying that to be derogatory to them. A lot of Italian friends, some of my best friends are Italian, but it's just the nature. It's a social society. And hey, so let's look at a couple of things about the coronavirus. Number one, it's basically a non-influenza type ailment. It appears to be susceptible to heat and humidity. Is your take on it that it's going to kind of go away come summer in the U.S.?
Yeah, I'm optimistic, and I'm optimistic because the way this administration is moving fast and furious, to do something about it. Some of the complaints you'll hear in Florida is that say, why'd they close the beaches when it doesn't exist on sand and heat and sunlight?
Good question. Good question.
And a lot of my friends are concerned back because I live near the beach, probably be like you do too. But
yeah,
the paradox is, I think the issue has very little to do with that as much as the media coverage of all these kids coming here. But the real reason is the social distancing aspect, not the beach. They want the kids to go home. They don't want them traveling. And by reducing traveling, by reducing social interaction and getting people to stay home if they don't need to be out and about is much of the issue. It isn't so much the beach issue or the sand or the whatever. It's just trying to keep people to stay home. And that's what's good. We're not in a lockdown posture. I listened to Governor DeSantis the other day, this morning, when he was talking about the National Guard's out here, so everybody's feeling a lot more reassured. It's certainly working in New York and California and now Washington State. Florida's already out there with their National Guard people, and they're administering tests, and that's good. So I think the fear factor will start to reduce over the next couple of weeks. This new testing process that Vice President Pence talked about, because he had a very invasive nasal swab, which wasn't any fun for him and his wife, he said. But this new thing will probably make it easier. You'll now have drive-through, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we'll get ahead of this. The next couple of weeks will be the telling point. And I'm excited about how our economy will probably bounce back. When you look how Americans react to this stuff, we're actually becoming more united now. And you're actually seeing the Congress become more united despite some of the infighting over the weekend.
Yeah, well, that's just politics.
It's going to rescue a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be happy. Waiters and waitresses will feel a lot better because they're broke for a while, and we don't want that to happen.
But it's going to add trillions to the deficit and eventually weaken the dollar in all likelihood, although every other country is going to have to do the same thing. Look, everybody's in the same boat, the whole world. One thing I've noticed, and I get this thing called crimespot.com, every day sends me back several reports on crimes that have taken place within 5 miles of my home. And, Florida is a pretty crime-ridden state. I've seen them go down, whereas there would be multiple reports, 1 or 2 reports, hit and run. I haven't seen any thefts. They're definitely down. And I think crime is coming down as a result, but it just is the whole thing. I know it's serious, especially if you're in the vulnerable segment of the population, but was it worth shutting down the world economy for, Brian?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Financial Survival Network is brought to you today by Orin Resources, a junior exploration company with the appetite of a major. It's hot on the trail of the next globally significant discovery, creating enormous potential upside for you, the shareholder. Orin is one of the most aggressive exploration companies pursuing high-grade, scalable gold and copper deposits and has a premier 7-project portfolio, including its 2 flagships, Committee Bay in the Arctic and Sombrero in Peru. Orin's unparalleled technical team and highly experienced management has a history of success in advancing and monetizing exploration assets. No wonder Orin's been called one of the best in the junior exploration sector. Orin trades on the TSX and the NYSE under AUG. To learn more, go to orinresources.com. That's AURYN resources.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
I don't know that we actually had a choice. To me, it has not shut it down. It's slowed it down. It's created some interesting behaviors. Think about the bombing in London during World War II. Mm-hmm. Think about the invasion of Europe by the Nazis and then overtaking Belgium and France. It happened. You might be old enough to remember some of this stuff, but we have been through these things before.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the criticism, the past administration, there was thousands of more people that died from the swine flu in 2009, and the administration, the government didn't do anything about it. They didn't have these issues. Now, the paradox is, I listened to President Trump the other day when he was talking about the economy, and when he was saying that so many industries are jumping forward and coming in to pick up the slack, So it's reducing the need for the government to take control. We don't want a nationalized thing. We don't want a national lockdown, and we don't want the National Guard to be federalized. They're given assets to the states to let them deal with it, to help in the medical field and to help these testing stations. So I suspect the economy will come back in a very strong way. He was talking about the tax relief, and because of that, we have not a slush fund. What's the word I want? We have a reserve that's pretty strong right now financially. So, like I said, I'm optimistic. I have a daughter and two son-in-laws who are still serving in the military. My parents did, and my uncle. So they're dealing with it on a daily basis. And the military is already out ahead of the curve. They've already reduced elective surgeries at the VA. They are more robust, and they're obviously less susceptible than the older people are. So I think what's interesting is how quickly the Veterans Administration has rallied support. A lot of doctors and nurses are coming back. There's a lot of retirees coming back to help. And it's amazing just to see the cohesiveness and the patriotism that's going on. I don't see a lot of backbiting, and there's a lot less rhetoric about behavior. I think Americans are glad to see a strong leadership, and certainly the team that's been assembled gives a lot of good answers to the public, and I'm glad for that.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, thing is that we've got a ways to go for this, probably at least a month or so. But how long can they just keep things shut down like this where people really start losing it?
Well, there's two answers. Number one, the $1 trillion plus the aid package will solve the problem. All these little issues of holding up people's rent and being able to defer payments, the money that'll be provided to the American population without a bureaucratic process. Small business owners will be able to work directly with the IRS. I'm looking at all the nitnoy, the individual personal issues that address you and I as individuals or retirees or small business owners as far as income. And I think with Munchin doing what he's doing, everybody's pretty excited that there's going to be money provided quickly so people don't suffer paying their bills. That in itself is a unique process. You don't have to go out and fill out a bunch of forms. And they're going to provide money pretty quickly and pretty rapidly. And that's going to all occur in the next several days. That's important. And that will reduce the fear and the stress of people who are losing money or unemployed. We have to do this quickly, otherwise you're going to have a lot more serious issues.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
And again, and then the medical industry is working pretty hard. A lot of countries are looking towards the United States to come up with the solutions, and we'll share it around the world with other countries because that's how we operate as a country anyway. So I'm looking more for the positive side of it. I'm also looking from the standpoint more people have died from the normal flu than they have this.
Yes.
But that's the other side. But again, if history is any teacher of this, we actually will come out far ahead as time goes on. The matter is, what's going to happen the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, that is the question.
Pray a lot and hand it in there. Every time I jumped out of an airplane, I prayed, brother, and it worked every time, about 1,000 times. So pray a lot. It does work.
You know what pilots say, any landing you walk away from is a good one, right?
That's right. I always noticed the pilots never had parachutes.
That's right.
They had to land the plane.
So true. So true. Well, hey, really appreciate you coming on, Brian. Is there any way we can connect with you on the web, Twitter, website, whatever?
They've produced a website for me. It's called BoydIntelligence.com. And you could reach me through that. That was just done about a week or two ago. Frank had put that together along with his media contacts. Great. So if there's some way I can help you there, I'm sort of new into this industry. I spent a career in the government service, as you know, with the various agencies. So I'm out there and I'm accessible and I'm available, and I'll be glad to do anything I can to help answer questions. And I just want people to be very positive. Just know that your intelligence community is far better today than it used to be when I was in the business. Certainly the federal law enforcement agencies are stepping up based on their mistakes and errors and their lack of credibility. So a lot of changes are coming about, and I think they're all going to be positive. And we just need to follow the basic rules, social distancing. Even on the farmers market was open, but they had the booths 6 feet apart.
Right.
They wore gloves, et cetera, but businesses have still got to operate. We just have to be prudent and follow protocol.
Agreed. Well, we appreciate you coming on there, Brian. Hey, any questions for Brian or myself? We'd love to hear from you. How is the coronavirus affecting you? Do you know anybody who's gotten it? And economically, how's it affecting you? Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com, kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feed @KerryLutz, Facebook page is Financial Survival Network, and of course our home site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Brian, thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk to you again real soon.
I'm available anytime you ask, Kerry. Thank you very much.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.